What's up YouTube, Capital G here. We're talking about skill in this video. It's what generally separates the haves from the have-nots, and it's something that nearly every player strives to gain. But what if you could easily rack up the wins while using pretty much next to none of it? Meet the Helmet deck, a strong and powerful deck that generally relies on simple locks and minimal thought process rather than complex plays or wisdom. So I've decided to rank the best dumbed down decks we've ever seen in a video that I'm calling the top 10 Helmet decks of all time. The Yu-Gi-Oh hierarchy. Number 10, Mass Heroes. Kicking off this list is possibly the most helmet version of all the hero builds, which is definitely saying something considering if you look at heroes throughout the years of Yu-Gi-Oh, this included skill drain heroes, little city, big city. Mass Heroes are completely reliant on the long arm of the law, so much so that they'll resort to paying half their life points or even run crap like Goblinberg to make sure that he hits the field. Number 9, Six Samurai. Yet another deck that is completely reliant on its stun-inducing ace boss monster, but this one has built-in protection for itself, which makes things even simpler. As long as you can launch another Six Samurai, Big Shin will have no problem sticking around and staying on the field causing havoc. The only time you ever had to think when playing Six Samurai is if you open Gateway, and then you'd only have to think to yourself, how many Shins do I want to make this turn? Number 8, Youll Send You. I really love Youll Send You because they're built very similar to Blackwings, but without any of the recovery cards whatsoever. Once you start losing the monsters in this deck, you generally lose the duel, which has led a lot of Youll Send You players to tirelessly attempt to YOLO spam the boards at nearly every chance that they can get and simply hope for the best. Number 7, Serteller Knights. This has got to be one of the easiest to play best decks that you'll ever use. Trust me, I know. Take the main 4 Teller Knights, max them out, throw in 3 Rhoda, and then just fill the rest of the deck up with a whole bunch of good trap cards. When you give an art type a Stratos, an Infernity Barrier, and a Wolfbark, and then you unlimit them all, the deck is pretty much going to run itself. Number 6, Tech Genus Stun. TG were supposed to be a fast-paced synchro deck, but then players realized it'd just be a lot easier to throw skill drain and a bunch of big beast monsters in the deck and make it a simplified generic beatdown. TG Stun has next to no complicated plays. All the monsters replace themselves when they die, and the hardest thing to do in the deck is simply remember to get your searches during the end phase. Number 5, Evil Swarm. I've seen so many dumbed down decks in my time, but Evil Swarm might just take the cake. Just like much of this list, it's pretty much boss monster or bust, but said boss monster can literally cripple entire archetypes by itself and searches out a forbidden lance that works for all the monsters in the deck. When players are willing to run vanilla monsters to summon the boss monster, you know it's pretty bad. Number 4, Dino Rabbit. Speaking of running vanillas just to summon boss monsters, this is the deck that pretty much invented that, but the kicker was you had 2 walking I'ma rape your bitch behemoth super stun boss monsters instead of 1. I'm sure that made things so much more difficult. No, not really, it didn't. Although sometimes it could be considered a tough decision as far as what to make, Lagi or Doka. I'm gonna say in terms of skill, if you take 0 and multiply it by 2, it still equals 0. Number 3, CLE Fort. This deck really reinvented the term rewarding players for making dumb plays. Unlike other decks on this list, such as Youll Send You, CLE Fort can overextend carelessly, they can give away their life points like candy, they can even blow up their own spell and traps without it actually hurting them or even giving a second thought to that. When you make use of the best floodgate cards in the game better than anybody else, and you have the pendulum mechanic to back up your dumb plays, you're pretty much on cloud 9 the whole time. Number 2, Herald of Perfection. If there is anything worse than having to run vanillas to summon your boss monster, it has to be having vanilla monsters to protect your boss monster. Herald being able to negate basically everything creates something even stupider than dumbed down skill drain, which I like to call caveman Yu-Gi-Oh. It creates a game where literally everything not named Herald becomes an expendable resource and serves no other purpose than to protect said Herald. And honestly, what type of fucking win condition is that to have? Literally walking into the game knowing every monster in my deck is supposed to protect 1 monster. And finally, number 1, Boojins. So just for reference for anybody out there who doesn't know, the term helmet deck was largely created to describe this one deck where most of the plays could be completed in under 30 seconds if you take out shuffling. Boojins took the protect the castle mindset and the deck perfected it. An entire deck where you only needed to summon 1 monster, and even though you had a full complete extra deck, you only used 1 monster. Boojins further simplified the game and dumbed it down by playing cards like Kaiser Coliseum and Royal Decree. It's like, have you ever seen the movie Troy? You know that scene where the 2 armies literally throw out all the strategy and everything else that decides who wins a war, and they just say, okay, well, let's have your most powerful soldier fight our most powerful one, and that kind of decides the entire battle. That's exactly what Boojins do. It's almost like Boojins are the embodiment of the card Last Turn, where everything Konami has created over the last 15 years, strategies and complex cards and mechanics, kind of gets thrown out the window, and you tell your opponent, your best monster is going to fight my best monster, and that's how we're going to decide this duel, and nothing else matters. So let me know what you guys think. Were there any dumbed down noob decks that I left off this list? If there were, leave that in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching, as always. Subscribing makes life happy.